Hey, Ben Swartz, welcome to the podcast again.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Yeah.
Great to see you
Hey,
again.
so we were talking about a topic for today around the idea of kind of perfecting or working on the manager and reportee relationship and how to optimize that. And you have a pretty good one that I'd love to talk about. And so maybe let's talk about remind people what your company is like, what it's made up of, what you do, and then maybe what you used to do, and then replaced it with this meeting.
Yeah, sure. Love to. Once again, thanks for having me. I love your podcast. It gets right into some interesting tidbits about what has worked, and so I thought maybe this would be a good one to share. So my company is Marcel Digital, website development and digital marketing services, SEO, paid media, and analytics primarily. Just celebrated our 18th year in the business. Thank you. So, many moons ago, I'm talking 15 years ago, we had a very typical sort of review process, if you will, where we gave direct feedback, every year, exactly what needs to be worked on, et cetera, et cetera. But, we found very quickly that it's just not enough. And we would find that people would leave or have otherwise problems at Marcel. They weren't happy at Marcel because of things that we had no idea were going on. And so we decided to start a more regular cadence, a monthly cadence, and we called it the Last Friday Meetings because it occurs on the last Friday of the month. And it is an opportunity for every single employee at Marcel to meet with their manager for 30 minutes to talk about their job, but not accounts, not how, performance. How are they doing? How is their stress level? What is their happiness level? How is their career path going? What questions can we answer?
Yeah.
And so for 30 minutes every single month, every single employee for the better part of 15 years, and I got to tell you, I feel like it's a little bit of magic we were lucky enough to catch way back.
I see this. So in your mind, what, for you, a manager is doing a great job if what? What do you mostly look to them to do with their people that are reporting to them?
Yep. So, we're in the services business, right? So we are, it's all made up of people. These skilled individuals need to produce, they need to produce results, but we get infinitely more out of every single employee when they are thoroughly happy in their jobs. We actually, we all read, when we started this program, the Daniel Pink book, which emphasizes, autonomy, mastery, and purpose is what really drives people. But we found that a manager is really performing when they really have a connection and truly understand their employees. What makes them tick, what makes them happy, is really the entire game from a managerial perspective.
That's a really good point, because I know for most companies, us included, we moved away from that only annual review also just because it's too long of a data point. Things move so quickly, and it's almost a cliche in our industries where, it wouldn't be unusual for someone to be somewhere for maybe a year and a half or 2 years, in which case they would have met with you once, kind of thing. And that's just not enough. Right. I know a lot of our teams have kind of moved into some, even as much as a weekly one-to-one meeting, just to do that very same thing, to check in. How are you doing? What's happening with this? I think we do a little bit of maybe on-the-job training or kind of course correction around some of the minutia stuff. But I really like what you've done with the kind of making it more macro focused. I'm curious how did you land on that versus maybe something different, a little bit more prescriptive, about the current projects and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have plenty of meetings about projects and programs and clients and what's working. We have every communication tool known to man, right? We're in Slack and we're in email. And so what we found out is that so there is a formula to what we do. Every single employee is asked the same question at the outset of every meeting. And that is on a scale of 1 to 10, taking the entire month into consideration, 1 being you're bored to tears, and 10 being that you cannot possibly keep up this workload for another 3 months or you will have to quit. What number would you give yourself? We call it the stress test score. And we want to quantify. We want to quantify their stress levels. And every employee is going to answer it differently. But with that number, we can track how the entire company is doing as a whole, and we can track every individual as a whole. And the manager, before the meeting, will have taken a moment to sort of guess what they think the person's number is going to be. And so then if they're not on the same page, if they're off by a point or two, that's a really good discussion point. Because a lot of times, we were finding that an employee would say, I'm so stressed. There's so much going on. I'm so stressed. And we would think, yeah, that's great, right? You love being busy, right? I love being busy, right? And then they say, I quit. Yeah. You say, oh, you're that kind of stressed, right? Well, I told you, didn't I? And it's, well, you did, but for whatever reason, I took it as you were kind of like enjoying the roller coaster, if you will. And so we'll ask people how they're doing. They'll say they're stressed, and we'll say, what's your number? And they're like, 6. And oh, great. So that's wonderful. Good to hear. And some people will say 9. And then, without, we will obviously have a follow-up discussion, but you'll know that you've got your work cut out for you. Something needs to be addressed.
So it's interesting. So do you find that you establish a baseline? Is it a company baseline, or does each person have their own kind of range that they operate in, do you think?
Yeah, everyone has their own individual range of the score that they give on a monthly basis. It's great fodder for conversation. But then at the end of the month at company meetings, we always talk about what the overall score was of the company. And, it's pretty subtle, but it certainly correlates to our utilization rates, which is interesting. And so it makes sense. It makes sense to us.
Huh. So we talk about stress. What else do you do in the meeting?
Yeah, that's great. So we ask a lot of subjective questions, right? How do you like to be praised, publicly, privately? What was your best day this month and why?
Okay.
What was your worst day this month and why? Really makes for an interesting conversation. I hear things all the time that I would not have anticipated. That piece is relatively new. We hired a consultant who encouraged us to have these regular meetings, and of course, I felt like it was a big pat on the back when I said, "Well, we do have regular meetings," and they said, "Ask those questions and see what you get." Well,
it's good because I imagine you see you see what you get to learn what's important to the person and what they value, and that kind of thing. Any big surprises having done that in terms of with confidentiality in mind, like things people said that was like, oh, that's a really good nugget I can use.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's there's someone in particular who could work. We don't want this to be the norm, but there's a few 50-hour weeks, and we're and I see those timesheets getting turned in. I said, I don't want it. I don't want 50-hour weeks. And the stress score was lower than anticipated. And it was because the team around this person was happy. And so I found that so interesting that they sort of, their happiness is correlated with the happiness of the organization as a whole. Which I thought was super cool. It wasn't all about the hours that were being put in. That was sort of secondary.
Yeah. Well, it's great because a lot of times like that subjective question gets at the context of the number. So sometimes you're right. Sometimes 50 is a really bad, tough week. And sometimes it's like, oh, this was whatever. I needed to do it. It was fun. I get it, whatever. And, it's all the context that matters.
That's right. I think that's exactly true. I think sometimes, if you're sitting on the couch and it's the evening and knocking out a few things, it feels comfortable, it feels productive, but there's certainly a version of those 50-hour weeks that are not. And what I love about these meetings is I can catch it early. We can hear it so early, right? We can talk about it. I thought, for example, we say, I thought you were going to be a 7 and you're coming in at a 9. That's interesting to me because your utilization isn't that high. Let's talk about it. What's going on? And we often find out that there's a lot of things that are heard by everyone in the company during the course of a month that one can't possibly keep track of, right? And it starts building up. Hey, I heard leadership had mentioned X, Y, and Z. Would that mean that they're moving away from my specialty, right? And so this stress occurs, and if we just have this opportunity to have a conversation, and so I should mention, everyone during the course of a month is asked to write down, keep track of every little thing that they hear that irritates them or bothers them, manager and employee, anything that they might hear that's on their minds. And by capturing it and writing it down, they don't have to remember it. They don't have to. Doesn't have to bang around in the back of their mind. And then moments before the last Friday or the end of the month meeting, they can sort of review that list and realize, oh, wait a second, that was silly. That was resolved. That's not a thing. But this is still sort of bothering me. And so now I can talk about it. Now we can clear the air.
This is your Festivus moment, right?
This is the Festivus moment. We do call this meeting, the nickname for this meeting is the airing of grievances. A lot of positive, but certainly, things that are involved in there, but certainly we capture some of the negative early. I heard this. Let's talk about it because that's not what we want. So it's been productive.
I really like that. So if anything, now I think of you as, of your many talents and traits, as an analytics focused guy. So having done all this for a while now, have you noticed anything in the things you measure in the business that have changed for the better or at least more interpretable now?
Yeah, certainly. Like we can quantify, retention. Typically our retention rates have been progressively better since we initiated this program. And I think it's also an opportunity when things are not working out that we can have a reasonable exit. A reasonable parting of the ways, right? So we start uncovering that it's not a great fit. The last thing that anyone in our types of businesses might need is an abrupt departure. Oh, yeah. And certainly the employee doesn't need an abrupt departure.
Nobody does.
And the clients certainly don't want an abrupt departure. So if we can manage a departure, that's probably one of the biggest wins that we get out of these monthly meetings.
Yeah, I like that. Well, so, one of the where we started talking about this is, a lot of, if you're a business owner, you're collecting ideas and books and things from books and from friends and from peer groups, et cetera. And I know, we've stolen a lot of our ideas from others. Mutual friend of ours, Dave Giordano, I stole this idea of doing a weekly kind of recognition meeting where we give out $100. And we've been doing that for, 4 or 5 years now. And it's one of those things that, as we talk to people, it's like something people know about and and, who doesn't like getting $100 cash every week kind of thing. And I'm curious for you, what are the things, what other meetings like this have you picked up, ideas you picked up that you've really, really liked in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I had, was referred to a company called Tiny Pulse some time ago. There's a few competitors. 15.5 is a great one as well, where it's a tool that asks every employee a question once a week. It's a very simple question. They could typically answer it with just a click of a button, right? It's a score, 1 through 5. 1 to 5. How do you feel about X, Y, Z? But there's actually an algorithm behind it that determines employees' happiness against the industry and against the field, if you will. Yeah. And there's an opportunity to write anonymously. And so we get an amazing amount of feedback every week from these responses that we receive.
Oh, that's really good. Any big kind of revelations there that you've uncovered?
It varies. I like when there's multiple people saying the same thing. I think that really shows up on our radar in a big way. But sometimes we hear things like, "You guys used to bring bagels on Fridays. Like, where'd those bagels go?" And it's like, "You're right. We should get back. Yeah. We should get back to the bagels." But sometimes you do get good bits. And you get, and there's positive and negative in there. And I think at the very least, there's this anonymous conversation happening where you can really be talking to someone and say, I know you're right. We messed that up. It was a mistake. And I can just own it, right? As opposed to them wondering whether Ben or the rest of leadership truly understand that we messed up. It's nice to be able to say, we messed up.
Sure.
I think,
Oh, that's really great. Okay, so this has been really cool hearing about that. What you call it? Is it the end of month meeting?
the end of the month, or the last Friday, or the airing of grievances.
As we've been talking, I'm thinking about, okay, how can I adapt that to what we're doing? I think it would work great, so we're going to try it, and I'll let you know how it goes. And by the next time we talk, I'll either say thanks and buy you a beer, or I'll quietly say that did not work at all, and we try something different. But I think that's the idea. The reason, for me, the idea behind the conversation is you got to try these things and see if it works and adapt. And hardly anything ever comes in at 100% and lands. You've always got to kind of adapt and mold to your own situation a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. We've never lost when we shut up and listen.
That's a good one. That's really good. Well, that's a perfect note to end on. So we will shut up, and I'll see you next time on the podcast. You made it all the way to the end. Thanks. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video to hear more content just like this.